The sky above New Haven burned with colors that should never exist. Commander Calaventris pressed her back against the crumbling wall of the command center and watched another Vorthan ship pass overhead. The alien vessel moved like a giant metal whale through the atmosphere, its weapons firing down at the city below. Each blast turned buildings into dust and people into memories. Kala wiped blood from her forehead and looked at the communication panel. The screen flickered with damage but still worked. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as explosions shook the ground around her. She had maybe 5 minutes before the Vorthans found her position and turned it into another crater. The Zephyrian colony of New Haven had been peaceful just 3 days ago. Children played in the crystal gardens while their parents worked in the biolabs. The blue-skinned Zephyrians lived simple lives, growing food and studying plants. They had no weapons beyond basic security systems. They never thought they would need them. Then the Vorthans came. The black ships appeared without warning, dropping out of hyperspace like angry hornets. General Krex broadcast his demands across all frequencies. The Zephyrians would surrender their world or watch it burn. They had 1 hour to decide. Kala remembered how the Colony Council had met in emergency session. Elder Turan suggested they contact the Galactic Coalition for help. Surely the great powers of space would protect a peaceful world. The message went out immediately, begging for assistance from anyone who would listen. The hour passed. No help came. The Vorthans attacked. Now Kala crouched in the ruins of everything she had sworn to protect. Her defense forces were scattered or dead. The orbital platforms had been destroyed in the first wave. The planetary shield generators lay in smoking pieces across 3 continents. She activated the long-range transmitter and began recording. Her voice stayed calm even as the building shook around her. This is Commander Calaventris of the Zephyrian Defense Force broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. The colony world of New Haven is under attack by Vorthan invasion forces. We have no weapons capable of stopping them. Our people are dying. Please, if anyone can hear this message, we need immediate military assistance. The message went out across space, traveling faster than light to reach every world within 50 parsecs. Kala hoped someone would hear it. Someone had to hear it, light years away. The Altarian Council received the transmission. Chancellor Vex studied the message with 6 eyes while his advisors whispered around him. The Altarians had the most advanced technology in known space. Their ships could reach New Haven in days. But Chancellor Vex shook his head slowly. We must follow proper procedures, he said. File a formal request with the Coalition Emergency Committee. Schedule hearings for next month? The Kethver war leader Thak heard the message too. His people were warriors who lived for battle. But even Thak hesitated when he learned the enemy was Vorthan. Too risky, he growled to his officers. We need proof they actually attacked first. Cannot start a war over one colony. The Selenite ambassador received the transmission in her crystal palace. She felt genuine sadness for the Zephyrians but explained to her staff that any military action required extensive environmental impact studies. We must consider the effects on local space wildlife, she said. These things take time. Time the Zephyrians did not have. On Earth, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison sat at his monitoring station in the Deep Space Communications Center. The night shift was usually quiet, listening to radio signals from distant stars. Most were just background noise or routine cargo ship chatter. But this signal was different. Jake had never heard of Zephyrians or Vorthans or any alien species. As far as Earth knew, they were alone in the universe. But the voice speaking over the radio sounded desperate and afraid. Jake had heard that same tone from human soldiers calling for backup in dangerous places. He played the message 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. Someone was under attack. Someone needed help. The fact that they were aliens did not matter to Jake. He reached for his secure line to Terra Command. Admiral Patricia Wells had just finished her evening coffee when the call came in. She listened to the alien transmission without interrupting. When it finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Her aide, Colonel Murphy, waited nervously. "Ma'am," Murphy finally asked, "what are your orders?" Admiral Wells stood up and walked to the window overlooking Earth's blue oceans. Somewhere out there, people were dying while politicians made excuses. She had spent 30 years in the military learning one simple rule: when someone calls for help, you go. "Wake up Captain Blake," she said. "Tell him to prep the Defiance for immediate departure, full combat load." "But Admiral," Murphy protested, "we have no authority to intervene in alien conflicts. The Council will never approve." "The Council can approve it after we save some lives," Wells said firmly. "Someone called for help. That is all the authority I need." Captain Ryan Blake had been asleep for exactly 2 hours when the emergency alert woke him. The red lights in his quarters flashed like angry eyes while the communications system buzzed with urgent messages. Blake rolled out of bed and grabbed his uniform, already knowing this was not a drill. The corridor outside his cabin buzzed with activity. Crew members ran past carrying equipment and weapons. Blake made his way to the bridge of the UES Defiance, his heavy cruiser that had been docked at Luna Station for repairs. Whatever was happening, it was big enough to pull them away from maintenance. Commander Sam Carter stood at the tactical station studying star charts when Blake arrived. Her dark eyes looked worried as she turned to face him. "Captain, we just received orders from Admiral Wells. We are launching a rescue mission to alien space." Blake stopped walking. In his 15 years with the Earth Defense Force, he had never heard those words before. "Alien space?" "Yes, sir," Carter said. "An unknown species called Zephyrians sent out a distress call. They are under attack by something called the Vorthan Empire. Admiral Wells wants us to respond immediately." Blake looked at the main screen where Lieutenant Alex Torres was pulling up navigation data. The young engineer looked confused as he worked with star charts that showed nothing but empty space beyond Earth's explored region. "How far?" Blake asked. "Approximately 18 light-years," Torres answered. "But sir, we have no star charts for that area. No trade routes, no navigation beacons, nothing. It would be like flying blind through a minefield." Chief Medical Officer Lisa Hayes joined them on the bridge. Her medical frigate Mercy was docked nearby and would accompany any rescue mission. "Captain, I have been listening to the alien transmissions. The situation sounds desperate. Civilian casualties are mounting every hour we delay." Blake studied the faces of his crew. They all knew the risks of jumping into unknown space. Ships could emerge inside stars, asteroid fields, or worse. But they also knew their duty. "When someone called for help," the Earth Defense Force answered. "Torres, how long to plot a safe course?" Blake asked. "Working with Chief Navigator Emma Rodriguez, maybe 6 hours for a conservative route," Torres replied. "But Captain, conservative might be too slow." "Those people could be dead by the time we arrive," Blake nodded. "What about a direct route?" Torres swallowed hard. 4 jumps through completely uncharted space. "We could make it in maybe 10 hours, but the risk of emerging in a gravity well or debris field is very high." On the main screen, communications specialist Danny Park brought up the latest transmission from New Haven. The alien voice sounded tired and scared. Background explosions could be heard clearly. Whatever was happening there was getting worse. By the minute, meanwhile, reports came in from other ships in the hastily assembled rescue fleet. The destroyer Liberty under Captain Joe Barnes was loading Marines and heavy weapons. The destroyer Courage with Captain Maria Santos was taking on extra fuel and ammunition. All 3 ships would follow Blake's lead into the unknown, the Galactic Coalition continued their debates. In the Altarian Council chambers, Chancellor Vex explained why immediate action was impossible. "We must verify the Zephyrian claims," he said to the assembled delegates. "Perhaps this is some kind of misunderstanding that diplomacy could resolve." War leader Thak of the Kethver paced angrily in his command center. His warriors wanted to fight, but the politicians demanded proof of Vorthan aggression. "Show us evidence," they said. "Bring us documents and witness statements." By the time such evidence could be gathered, there would be no witnesses left alive. The Selenite ambassador held emergency meetings with her environmental council. Any military intervention would require impact studies on local space ecosystems. They needed to consider effects on cosmic dust patterns, gravitational fields, and potential disruption to migrating space whales. Such studies would take months to complete. Back on the Defiance, Blake gathered his senior officers in the briefing room. The ship hummed with preparation as crew members loaded supplies and checked weapon systems. Everyone knew they were about to attempt something that had never been done before. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blake began, "in approximately 1 hour we will jump to a star system 18 light-years away to help people. We have never fight an enemy we know nothing about. We have no maps, no intelligence, and no backup. Questions?" Lieutenant Torres raised his hand. "Sir, what if we arrive too late?" "Then we give them justice instead of rescue." Blake answered simply. Commander Carter asked the question they were all thinking. "Captain, what authority do we have to intervene in an alien war?" Blake was quiet for a moment. Outside the briefing room windows, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel. Somewhere out there, other worlds orbited other stars. On one of those worlds, people were dying while politicians made excuses and bureaucrats filed paperwork. "The only authority that matters," Blake said finally. Someone called for help. An hour later, the human rescue fleet prepared for departure. Blake sat in his command chair watching the final system checks. Torres announced readiness from engineering. Carter confirmed weapons were armed and shields were powered. Hayes reported the Mercy was ready for casualties. "All ships, this is Blake," the captain broadcast to the fleet. "We go in fast and we hit hard. Our job is simple: save lives and stop the bad guys. Any ship that wants to turn back now, I understand. No shame in admitting this mission is probably suicide." "No ship turned back? Then let's go rescue some aliens," Blake said. "All ships, jump on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." The human fleet vanished into hyperspace, racing toward a distant world where strangers waited for help that might never come. The first jump nearly killed them all. The used Defiance dropped out of hyperspace inside an asteroid field that stretched for millions of kilometers in every direction. Captain Blake gripped his command chair as chunks of rock the size of buildings tumbled past the bridge windows. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the ship. "All stop!" Blake shouted. "Torres, damage report." Lieutenant Alex Torres worked frantically at his engineering station. Sparks flew from damaged control panels while the ship shuddered under impacts from smaller asteroids. "Hull breach on Deck 7, but contained. Navigation array is damaged, but functional. We can continue, but barely." Chief Navigator Emma Rodriguez plotted their escape route through the deadly field. Her hands moved quickly over the controls as she calculated safe passages between the floating mountains of stone and metal. "Captain, I can get us out, but we need 20 minutes to clear the field safely." 20 minutes they could not afford. On New Haven, Commander Calaventris was broadcasting increasingly desperate updates. Vorthan ground forces had landed in 3 cities. The alien invaders showed no mercy to civilians. Every minute the human fleet spent dodging asteroids meant more Zephyrian deaths. The second jump went better but brought new problems. The fleet emerged near a dying star that filled space with dangerous radiation. The Defiance's shields held, but the smaller destroyers Liberty and Courage suffered system failures. Captain Joe Barnes reported power fluctuations while Captain Maria Santos dealt with overheating engines. Medical Officer Lisa Hayes monitored radiation levels from her frigate Mercy. All ships maintain maximum distance from the star. Exposure at this level will cook us in 30 minutes. Communications specialist Danny Park worked to boost their long-range transmitters through the interference. He managed to pick up more transmissions from New Haven, including intercepted Vorthan military chatter. The alien voices spoke in harsh, mechanical tones about acceptable casualty rates and efficient elimination procedures. "They talk about killing people like it's a business transaction," Park said with disgust. Meanwhile, the Galactic Coalition continued their endless debates. In the Altarian Council, Chancellor Vex announced the formation of a special committee to study the Zephyrian situation. The committee would meet next week to establish guidelines for future meetings about creating a response plan. War leader Thek of the Kethver received new intelligence reports about Vorthan ship movements. His analysts concluded that any military intervention would require at least 6 months of preparation. They needed to study Vorthan tactics, develop counter-strategies, and train special forces. All very reasonable and completely useless, too. The dying Zephyrians, the Selenite ambassador, made a formal statement expressing deep concern for the environmental impact of space warfare. Her scientists worried that weapons fire might disturb cosmic dust clouds or alter gravitational fields. They recommended a peaceful solution through mediation and cultural exchange programs. The third jump brought the human fleet to a binary star system where 2 suns danced around each other in eternal orbit. Lieutenant Torres struggled to calculate safe passage through the complex gravitational fields while avoiding the radiation storms that crackle between the stars. "This is worse than flying through a hurricane," Torres muttered as he rerouted power to the shields. Commander Sam Carter monitored the tactical display as the fleet navigated the dangerous system. The binary stars created unpredictable gravity, wells that could tear a ship apart or fling it into deep space. "Captain, we're pushing the engines beyond safe limits. If we lose power here, we're dead." Blake studied the navigation display. They were still 6 light-years from New Haven, and every jump brought new hazards. The fleet was taking damage they could not repair, burning fuel they could not replace, and flying deeper into unknown territory with no way home except forward. "How long until the final jump?" Blake asked. Rodriguez checked her calculations. 4 hours to clear this system safely, then 1 more jump to reach Zephyrian space. 4 more hours. Blake wondered if there would be anyone left to save by the time they arrived. The latest transmission from Commander Ventress suggested the colony's defenses were completely overwhelmed. Vorthan ships controlled the orbital space. While ground forces advanced on the last major city. In his private quarters, Blake recorded a message for Admiral Wells. If the rescue mission failed, Earth needed to know what they had attempted. "Admiral, we are proceeding to target despite significant obstacles. Whatever happens, know that we tried to do the right thing. If we don't make it back, send a bigger fleet." The 4th jump was the most dangerous yet. The fleet emerged from hyperspace traveling too fast, forced to use emergency braking thrusters to avoid crashing into a gas giant. The massive planet's gravity caught them like a giant hand, dragging the ships toward its poisonous atmosphere. "All ships maximum thrust," Blake ordered. "Break orbit now or we'll become part of that planet." The engines screamed with effort as the human ships fought against the gas giant's pull. The destroyer Courage lost an engine and fell behind, forcing Captain Santos to jettison cargo to reduce weight. The medical frigate Mercy developed hull stress fractures but kept flying. As they cleared the planet's gravity well, Chief Navigator Rodriguez announced they had reached the edge of Zephyrian space. 1 more jump would bring them to New Haven. The fleet had traveled 18 light-years through uncharted territory using nothing but courage and determination. "Final jump in 30 minutes, Rodriguez reported. "All ships prepare for combat. Emergence." Blake opened communications to the entire fleet. His words would be the last they heard before battle. "People, we came here to help strangers who called for aid. In a few minutes we'll find out if we're heroes or just very brave corpses. Either way, I'm proud to serve with you." The human rescue. Fleet prepared for their final jump into a war zone where the odds were unknown and the enemy was waiting. Behind them lay the safety of home. Ahead waited aliens who had never heard of humanity but desperately needed their help. Blake gave the order, "All ships jump." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace into hell. New Haven burned before them like a dying candle, its once blue atmosphere now filled with smoke and ash. Vorthan warships surrounded the planet in a tight blockade while smaller vessels moved. Between the surface and space, carrying fresh troops down and prisoners up. Captain Ryan Blake counted at least 30 enemy ships, each one larger than his heavy cruiser. The Vorthan vessels looked like black daggers carved from dark metal, bristling with weapons that glowed red in the starlight. Against this armada, Blake had 3 combat ships and a medical frigate. "My God," whispered Commander Sam Carter from the tactical station. "How are we supposed to fight that?" Before Blake could answer, communications specialist Danny Park picked up a transmission from the planet's surface. The voice was weak but determined, speaking in accented English learned from intercepted human broadcasts. "Unknown ships, this is Commander Cala Ventress of the Zephyrian Defense Force. Please identify yourselves." Blake took the microphone himself. "Commander Ventress, this is Captain Ryan Blake of the Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call. We're here to help." The silence stretched for several seconds. When Ventress spoke again, her voice shook with emotion. "Earth? We have never heard of your people, Captain Blake, but blessed be any who answer our call. The situation is desperate. Vorthan forces control orbital space and most of the surface. Our people are dying." Blake studied the tactical display while Ventress briefed him on enemy positions. The Vorthans had established a standard blockade formation, focusing their heavy ships around the planet's major population centers. Their ground forces were methodically destroying cities while orbital bombardment eliminated any resistance. "What's their weakness?" Blake asked. "They are arrogant," Ventress replied immediately. "They believe themselves superior to all other species. They use predictable tactics because they have never faced serious resistance. The Galactic Coalition always negotiates or surrenders," Blake smiled grimly. "Well, Commander, they've never met humans before." General Krex commanded the Vorthan fleet from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Iron Fist. When his sensors detected the approaching human ships, he barely bothered to look at the tactical display. 4 tiny vessels against his mighty armada? This would be over in minutes. "Unknown ships, you are interfering in Vorthan military operations?" Krex broadcast on all frequencies. "Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Blake's response was simple and direct. "General, this is Captain Blake. Go to hell." The battle began instantly. Blake ordered his fleet to use the planet's moon as cover, approaching from an unexpected angle that caught the Vorthans completely off guard. The destroyer Liberty, under Captain Joe Barnes, launched the first attack with a full spread of missiles aimed at the nearest enemy cruiser. The Vorthan ship's shields flared as human weapons struck home. The alien vessel staggered under the impact, its captain shocked that such small ships could carry such powerful armaments. This was not how space combat was supposed to work according to galactic traditions. Captain Maria Santos brought the destroyer courage in low and fast, skimming the planet's atmosphere to avoid enemy sensors. Her surprise attack destroyed 2 Vorthan frigates before they could react. The alien formation began to break apart as ships tried to track multiple fast-moving targets. Lieutenant Alex Torres pushed the Defiance's engines beyond safe limits, rerouting power from life support to weapons and shields. The human ships moved like angry hornets, striking hard and fast before disappearing behind asteroids or the planet's bulk. Each attack left damaged Vorthan vessels in their wake. "Impossible!" General Krex roared as he watched his organized formation dissolve into chaos. "They fight without honor, without proper formation discipline." His officers tried to explain that the humans were using unconventional tactics, but Krex refused to listen. In his experience, space combat followed strict rules. Ships formed battle lines and exchanged fire until one side surrendered. These humans ignored all civilized warfare protocols. Meanwhile, Captain Lisa Hayes brought the medical frigate Mercy through the combat zone to rescue survivors from damaged Zephyrian ships. Her vessel had minimal weapons but maximum courage as she flew directly into enemy fire to save alien lives. Vorthan commanders watched in amazement as the humans risked their own ship to help strangers. On the planet's surface, Commander Ventress rallied her remaining forces. The sight of human ships fighting impossible odds gave her people new hope. If these unknown aliens would cross space to help them, perhaps the battle was not yet lost. Blake coordinated the space battle while planning his next move. The Vorthans were confused and disorganized, but they still outnumbered his fleet by 8-1. He needed to take bigger risks to achieve victory. "Carter, target their command ship," Blake ordered. All weapons maximum power. Sir, that's General Krex's flagship, Carter replied. It's 3 times our size and heavily armored. Then we'll have to hit it 3 times as hard, Blake said. Torres, give me everything the engines have. Barnes, Santos, follow my lead. We're going in. The 3 human combat ships formed up in a CAC formation and charged directly at the Vorthan flagship. It was either the bravest or stupidest maneuver in military history, depending on how it turned out. General Krex watched the approaching ships with a mixture of respect and disbelief. They know they cannot win, Krex said to his bridge crew. Yet they attack anyway. What manner of species fights without hope of victory? His weapons officer tried to target the approaching humans, but their erratic flight patterns made accurate fire impossible. The human ships twisted and turned through space like dancers avoiding death, closing distance while the massive Vorthan dreadnought struggled to bring its heavy guns to bear a dot at point-blank range. Blake ordered all ships to fire everything they had. Human missiles, plasma cannons, and railguns struck the Iron Fist simultaneously. The flagship shields collapsed under the concentrated assault, and explosions blossomed across its armored hull. The psychological impact was even greater than the physical damage. Across the Vorthan fleet, captains watched their supposedly invincible flagship taking damage from ships a fraction of its size. If the humans could hurt General Krex's dreadnought, what else might they be capable of? The tide of battle was turning, but the fight was far from over. The battle reached its turning point when Captain Blake made the most dangerous decision of his career. With the Vorthan flagship damaged but still fighting, he knew space combat alone would not save the Zephyrians. The real war was happening on the planet's surface, where enemy ground forces were systematically destroying cities and killing civilians. Carter, prepare a boarding party, Blake ordered. We're taking the fight to the ground. Commander Sam Carter stared at him in shock. Sir, our shuttles will never make it through the orbital bombardment. The Vorthans will shoot us down before we reach the atmosphere. Blake smiled grimly. Not if they're too busy fighting each other to notice us. Torres, I need a miracle from engineering. Lieutenant Alex Torres had been pushing the ship's systems beyond safe limits for hours, but he nodded without hesitation. What do you need, Captain? Full power to one engine pod for 30 seconds. Everything we have, even if it burns out the entire propulsion system? Torres understood immediately. Blake planned to use the damaged Vorthan flagship as cover, accelerating past it so fast that the other enemy ships could not track them. It was either brilliant or suicidal, possibly both. The Defiance shot forward like a missile, using the Iron Fist's massive bulk to shield their approach. General Krex watched the human ship disappear toward the planet and felt something he had never experienced before, respect for an enemy. Meanwhile, Captain Joe Barnes commanded the destroyer Liberty in a desperate holding action against 6 Vorthan cruisers. His ship took hit after hit while Captain Maria Santos and the Courage provided covering fire. The human vessels were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with a ferocity that amazed their enemies. Captain Lisa Hayes piloted the medical frigate Mercy through the chaos, rescuing survivors from both human and Zephyrian ships. Her vessel took damage from multiple sources, but she refused to retreat while people needed help. Wounded aliens and humans worked together in her medical bay. United by pain and hope, Blake's shuttle broke through the atmosphere with half its hull on fire. The small craft carried 20 Marines under Colonel Pete Washington, along with Blake himself and a portable communication array. They landed hard near Commander Calaventris's position, where the last Zephyrian defenders were making their final stand. The blue-skinned Zephyrians stared in amazement as human soldiers emerged from the burning shuttle. Blake approached Commander Ventris, who was wounded but still directing her forces from behind a collapsed building. Commander Ventris, I'm Captain Blake, he said, helping her to her feet. We're here to even the odds. Ventris looked at the small group of humans and then at the thousands of Vorthan soldiers advancing across the city. Captain, your courage is admirable, but we are vastly outnumbered. How can so few make a difference? Blake checked his rifle and smiled. Ma'am, you're about to learn why humans are different. Colonel Washington deployed his Marines with precision born from years of experience. Staff Sergeant Kelly Brown led a team to capture the Vorthen Communication Center, while Lieutenant Danny Murphy established defensive positions around civilian shelters. The humans moved with purpose and coordination that impressed their alien allies. The 1st Vorthen Patrol encountered Staff Sergeant Brown's team near the Central Plaza. The enemy soldiers were large, reptilian creatures covered in dark armor and carrying energy weapons that could melt steel. They had conquered dozens of worlds using superior firepower and ruthless tactics. They had never fought humans before. Brown's team used cover and movement in ways the Vorthens could not understand. Human soldiers appeared from unexpected angles, struck hard, and vanished before the enemy could respond. The aliens found themselves fighting shadows that struck like lightning and disappeared like smoke. Lieutenant Murphy's defensive positions turned into killing zones where Vorthen advances broke apart under disciplined human fire. The Marines used every piece of debris, every ruined building, every advantage the urban terrain provided. What had been a rout became a desperate battle. In space, the tide was turning as well. The destroyer Liberty, damaged and outgunned, rammed a Vorthen cruiser at full speed. Captain Barnes and his crew died in the explosion, but they took the enemy ship with them. The sacrifice gave the courage and defiance time to regroup and counterattack. General Krex watched his carefully planned conquest fall apart. His space forces were scattered and confused by human tactics that ignored all accepted rules of warfare. His ground troops reported encountering resistance that fought like demons and refused to surrender even when surrounded. What are these humans? Krex demanded of his intelligence officers. Where do they come from? Why do they fight so hard for a world that is not theirs? His staff had no answers. In all their databases, there was no record of a species called humanity. These warriors had appeared from nowhere to defend strangers with a courage that defied explanation. On the ground, Blake coordinated with Ventress to plan a counterattack against the main Vorthen landing zone. The aliens had established a fortified position around their transport ships, believing it to be impregnable. They had not counted on human ingenuity. Staff Sergeant Brown's team had captured not just the communication center but also several Vorthen weapons and vehicles. Colonel Washington studied the alien equipment with professional interest, while his demolitions expert, Corporal Jane Smith, figured out how to turn enemy supplies into improvised explosives. Commander Ventress, Blake said as they prepared for the assault, your people need to understand something about humans. We don't fight for territory or resources. We fight because someone called for help, and we answered. Ventress nodded slowly. Your species is either very noble or very foolish, Captain Blake. Probably both, Blake admitted. But that's what makes us human. The combined human-Zephyrian force attacked the Vorthen stronghold at dawn. What the enemy expected to be a desperate last charge became a coordinated assault that overwhelmed their defenses. Human tactics and Zephyrian knowledge of local terrain proved an unstoppable combination. General Krex received the report of his ground forces' defeat with disbelief. How had a handful of alien warriors and local defenders destroyed an entire invasion army? His flagship was damaged, his fleet was scattered, and his ground forces were in retreat. For the first time in his career, General Krex considered the unthinkable: withdrawal from a conquered world. The end came faster than anyone expected. General Krex stood on the bridge of his damaged flagship, watching his invasion force retreat from New Haven in complete disorder. What should have been a simple conquest had become a nightmare of tactical failures and impossible human resistance. His communications officer reported that 3 more Vorthen ships had been destroyed by the remaining human vessels. The destroyer Courage, under Captain Maria Santos, was leading a pursuit that drove the alien fleet away from the planet. The medical frigate Mercy continued rescuing survivors from the battle, treating wounded from both sides with equal care. General, his tactical advisor said quietly, our ground forces are requesting immediate evacuation. The humans have destroyed our landing zone and captured most of our equipment. Krex looked at the tactical display showing the scattered remains of what had been a mighty armada. In 3 days, these unknown humans had accomplished what no species in galactic history had ever done. They had defeated a Vorthan invasion through superior tactics and sheer determination. "Signal the fleet," Krex said finally. "Full withdrawal from Zephyrian space?" His officers exchanged shocked glances. The Vorthan Empire had never retreated from a conquered world before. But then again, they had never encountered humans before. On the planet's surface, Captain Blake stood with Commander Calaventris in the ruins of New Haven's Central Plaza. Smoke still rose from destroyed buildings, but the sound of weapons fire had finally stopped. Human Marines and Zephyrian defenders worked together to rescue civilians from collapsed structures. "Captain," Ventress said, watching a human medic, "treat a wounded Zephyrian child. I do not understand your people. You traveled across space to help strangers, fought impossible odds, and asked for nothing in return. Why?" Blake picked up a piece of rubble and tossed it aside. "Commander, where I come from, we have a saying, when someone calls for help, you go. It doesn't matter who they are or how far you have to travel, you just go." Ventress smiled despite her exhaustion. "Your species is remarkable, Captain Blake. I hope someday our peoples can be true allies." Before Blake could respond, his communication device buzzed with an incoming message. The voice that emerged was angry and officious, speaking heavily, accented English with an air of supreme authority. "Attention unidentified vessels. This is Chancellor Vex of the Altarian Council leading the Galactic Coalition Emergency Response Force. You are ordered to withdraw immediately from Zephyrian space and allow proper authorities to handle this situation." Blake and Ventress looked at each other and started laughing. After a moment, Blake activated his transmitter. "Chancellor Vex. This is Captain Blake. You're about 6 hours too late. The situation has been handled." The silence that followed was almost comical. When Chancellor Vex spoke again, his voice was much less confident. "Handled? What do you mean, handled?" "I mean the bad guys are gone, the good guys are safe, and we're cleaning up the mess," Blake replied. "But thanks for stopping by." The Coalition fleet that emerged from hyperspace was impressive. 20 advanced Altarian cruisers, 15 Kethver battleships, and a dozen Selenite support vessels. They had come prepared for a major military operation, complete with diplomatic corps and media observers. What they found instead was 3 damaged human ships, 1 medical frigate, and a planet full of grateful Zephyrians who were already rebuilding their cities with human help. War leader Thak of the Kethver was the first to break the stunned silence on the Coalition command frequency. "The Vorthans are gone? How is this possible?" "Simple," Blake answered. "We asked them honestly to leave. When that didn't work, we shot at them until they got the message." Chancellor Vex tried to reassert his authority. "Captain Blake, you had no legal right to intervene in this conflict. The Coalition has procedures for handling these situations." "Yeah, I noticed your procedures," Blake said dryly. "Very thorough. How many committees did you form while people were dying?" The Selenite ambassador joined the conversation with her usual environmental concerns. "Captain, our preliminary scans show significant ecological damage from the battle. We must conduct full impact studies before any further action is taken." "Commander," Ventress cut in sharply. "Ambassador, with respect, we can conduct your studies after we finish burying our dead and rebuilding our homes." Over the next several hours, the full scope of what humanity had accomplished became clear to the Coalition observers. A completely unknown species had traveled across uncharted space, defeated a superior Vorthan force, and saved an entire world. Without asking for anything in return, the political implications were staggering. For centuries, the Galactic Coalition had maintained peace through careful diplomacy and endless negotiations. They had accepted Vorthan expansion as inevitable because no one was willing to fight. Now these humans had proven that the supposedly invincible empire could be defeated. News of the battle spread across Coalition space faster than light. On dozens of worlds, species that had lived in fear of Vorthan conquest suddenly saw new possibilities. If humans could stop the Empire, perhaps others could as well. 3 days later, Captain Blake stood in the newly constructed diplomatic center in New Haven's rebuilt capital. Commander Ventress, now promoted to planetary governor, formally invited humanity to establish relations with the Zephyrian Republic. Captain Blake, she said during the ceremony, your people have given us more than our freedom. You have given us hope that there are still species in the galaxy who will stand up for what is right. Blake accepted the offer on behalf of Earth, knowing that Admiral Wells and the government would approve. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not through conquest or manipulation, but through simple courage and compassion. As the ceremony concluded, Blake's communication device chimed with an urgent message. Danny Park's voice was excited as he reported a new transmission from deep space. Captain, we're receiving a distress call from a system 40 light-years away. Unknown species under attack by pirates. They're requesting immediate assistance. Blake looked at Ventress, who nodded with understanding. Go, Captain. There are others who need help. Governor, it's been an honor, Blake said with a formal salute. He walked toward his shuttle, where the crew of the Defiance waited to return to space. Behind him, Zephyrians and humans worked together to build a better future. Ahead lay another world, another call for help, another chance to prove that some things in the universe were worth fighting for. As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Blake opened communications to the unknown aliens in distress. His message was simple and direct. This is Admiral Blake of the Human Defense Fleet. We received your call for help. We're on our way. The stars beckoned, full of worlds that might need humanity's help. Blake smiled as the fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying hope to strangers across the galaxy. When someone called for help, humans would always answer. That was what made them human.